Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a career video. I've gotten a lot of questions about my job. I work in marketing and I live in London. I've been working in marketing for about 10 years now, and so I thought I would go ahead and do a whole video on it. So this is really going to be for people who are just starting out in marketing or are interested in getting into marketing, whether you're studying or already working. And so I'm going to mostly focus on how to get a job in marketing, so the ins and outs of things that you might want to know, but also I'm going to touch briefly upon what my average day of work looks like. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and you find it useful, and I'm going to get stuck right in. So as an overview, there are loads of different specialisms within marketing. You can go into events, you can go into digital, advertising, creative. There are just so many different categories, and within those categories you also get different specialisms. So for example, within digital marketing you can go into email marketing or social media, SEO, PPC. There are already so many different specialisms you can go into, so it's worthwhile thinking about what you want to do. And you know, if you're very young, also if you have an internship or something like that, giving everything a try so you get a feel for what suits you. It's also worth keeping in mind where you want to go. So if your ambitions are to be a marketing director one day, it's advisable not to be too niche, and if you are quite niche, then still keep an open mind and try to get new skills. So for example, if you're in email marketing, you really want to be looking at gaining other skills if you want to be a digital marketing director one day, because there aren't really directors of email marketing. You have digital marketing directors, and you have marketing directors, and you have CMOs, but you won't really get someone who's only focused on email marketing becoming a director. So it's worthwhile keeping in mind that if you do want to go niche, that you're still kind of gaining other skills if you do want to progress up the ladder. Generally speaking, the bigger the company, the more niche the roles you'll be able to find. So in really big companies like Coca-Cola or Apple, you're going to have, you know, at least one person, if not a team, for email marketing, for social media, for all those different little sections. Whereas if you work for a small company, you're really going to need to have one person that can do everything, or one or two people. So the smaller the company, generally speaking, the more general and broad the marketing role. If you go for very big companies, they want niche skills just because they have that many more people, that they don't want lots of general marketing people. They're going to want people with very, very specific niche skills. So that's something to keep in mind. Obviously with a bigger company you have lots of benefits, you know, often they pay more and benefits and all that kind of stuff, but with smaller companies you can often gain more experience. So it's definitely worth keeping in mind what you want, if you want to go for a brand name on your CV, or if you don't mind, you just want to get loads of really great experience. I think generally speaking, from what I've seen from the marketplace, there is definitely a shift towards getting results type marketing, if that makes sense. So my current role, which is a more broad general role, so you know, I do mostly events, but that's just because it's what suits the company and its need, but I also do a bit of everything, and the brief very much is whatever gets the job done, and it's very results orientated that way. And I think that's common in a lot of B2B companies. So I work in a B2B, which means business to business, meaning we sell to other businesses, rather than B2C, which is consumer and selling to the customer or the public. So my job is very much about getting the results, and for me that means helping to generate good leads and making sure that the sales team are well equipped to kind of close deals. That's very much a B2B kind of perspective, but whatever job you have, essentially it will come down to achieving results, and it does vary how much freedom you get to do that. In my current job I do have quite a bit of freedom, but it is very much about whatever gets the job done. So for us, events works really well, but that won't be true of other companies, perhaps even within the same industry. So for me it's very much about getting results and seeing kind of those bottom line sales. As I said, that will vary, but it is very, very results orientated. Another option available is to choose to work either in-house or on the agency side. So generally speaking, agencies will be specialised either in digital marketing or creative services or PR, if you consider that under marketing, and whereas in-house is obviously slightly different. Agency, you have clients and you'll have accounts that you work on, whereas obviously if you're in-house you only have the one brand that you're going to work on. Personally speaking, I prefer working in-house. I've worked on both sides, and I just really like the idea of kind of investing in a brand, learning about its products and really learning how to sell them and market them. Whereas obviously on the agency side you have clients, and so you have different accounts, so you have more variety, I guess, working with lots of different brands, but you don't necessarily get that super in-depth knowledge. So that's something to consider whether you prefer the variety or kind of really going in depth. For me it's all about being in-house, but obviously that's just up to personal preference. In terms of the different levels that you can go in at and the different job titles, generally speaking, it goes marketing assistant or coordinator to marketing executive to marketing manager. In big companies, you can then get senior marketing manager, and then you can go up to marketing director or CMO, which is chief marketing officer. There is a lot of variation within the industry though, and you'll have just different titles. So you'll get, you know, a marketing campaign manager, or, you know, especially if it's specialized well, you'll have digital marketing executive or email marketing executive. So that is a lot of variation, but generally speaking, those are the common ones. Or if you work for an investment bank, they have completely different job titles altogether. So it starts off as analyst, and then I think it's associate, and then it's like vice president. It's really confusing, and then you have director, which is higher. It's so confusing, but generally speaking, in most normal marketing companies, it goes assistant, executive, manager, and then director. I also thought it might be useful to go over what kind of salary you can expect at different levels. This is by no means definitive or backed up or anything. It's literally just my experience of the job market, what I've been offered, what my friends have been offered, and what I've seen advertised. So not research at all, it's just my experience of it, and it's also obviously specific to the London job market. Please keep in mind that if you're based elsewhere, this might not be true where you live. Often salaries are a lot higher in London because the cost of living is so much higher, but I have general kind of figures here from what I've seen. So generally speaking, for a marketing assistant or coordinator role, you can expect anywhere from 18,000 to 26 or 27,000. For marketing executive, anywhere from 20,000 to 35,000. For a marketing manager, you can expect 30,000 to 65,000. So obviously very big jumps, and generally speaking, the higher the role or the more senior the role, the bigger the difference can be in terms of salary range, from, you know, a really small company that doesn't have a lot of budget to kind of large companies. Senior marketing manager, anywhere from 40,000 to 80,000. Marketing director, anywhere from 45,000 to 100,000 plus. So obviously a lot of variation, and I'm sure you will be able to find jobs at those levels which don't fall into those salary categories, but generally speaking, from what I've seen, that's what the London job market is like in terms of salary. It's really important to keep in mind that the single biggest factor on your salary will undoubtedly be industry, so it's something to pick very, very carefully. There is huge variations even at the same level between industries, so you can get a marketing manager in one industry that will be paid completely differently from a marketing manager in a different industry. Generally speaking, and this is just in my experience, the more glamorous industries like fashion or hospitality or retail, they will pay less than more kind of boring industries like finance or professional services. And by professional services, I mean accountancy firms or consultancies or law firms. They will generally speaking pay more than a job in fashion at a similar kind of level, just because if you think about it, you know, lots of people are going to want to work for Burberry in their digital marketing, and so there's no incentive to actually pay a lot of money. I'm not saying that Burberry doesn't pay well, I don't know how much they pay, but that's just an example, whereas professional services will often pay a lot more. So that's something that you do have to kind of consider and keep in mind. For me personally, I decided quite early on that even though I love fashion, I didn't just want to be surrounded by beautiful things that I couldn't afford to buy. I wanted to be able to earn a really good salary, which is why I went down more of the kind of professional services route. So for me, that was absolutely the right decision, but that changes according to personal preference. So something to definitely keep in mind. I will say that just because you pick one industry, it doesn't mean that, you know, you're doomed to be in that industry for the rest of your life. I have made it my policy to kind of change industry every time I change jobs, just because I didn't want to be pigeonholed. But do keep in mind that it is a lot harder to do that. So you will find it a lot easier to find a job in that same industry than you will to kind of change industry. If you make a practice of doing it all the time, it does get easier, but keep in mind that it's not as easy to change industry once you're already in one. In terms of what a random average working day might look like, it obviously really depends on what your particular specialism is. If your role is very niche and you work for a very large company, then you will likely have less variation than someone who works in a smaller company who has a more general marketing role and they have to do a bit of everything. So that's one of the things that I really like about my job, is that, you know, it's not a huge company, so a lot of it I do have to do myself, but because of that I do get a lot of variation. I will say in terms of events marketing, because of the the nature of it. You will have kind of lull periods, and then you will have super crazy busy periods. And for me, we work on a quarterly basis, so I will generally speaking have I'd say 2 weeks out of every quarter, so every 3 months, where it's literally just flat out mental craziness. I have to work 12, 14, 16-hour days, and it's just non-stop. And then the rest of the time, you know, sometimes I'll have very quiet periods, and other times it'll just be kind of a nice level of busy. But because of events, that's just the way it works. You know, the closer you get to the event, the busier you'll be, and that's just the kind of nature of the job that I do at the moment. That's not as true from other jobs that I've had, but as I said, it really does depend. But for me, when it's not event time, an average day will look at, you know, getting some marketing and reporting figures. It will be setting up a campaign, so doing, you know, an email invitation. It might be sourcing new supplies, it might be checking out venues, or it might be menu planning, or it will be, you know, planning a new campaign, it might be brainstorming, it might be looking over figures with the sales team. You know, it really does vary, and a lot of it is kind of up to me what I do in that specific day, but we just have kind of targets every quarter that we try and hit, and a lot of it, as I said, is quite creative in how we do that. So it really does vary. I've specifically picked roles which have been quite varied because I don't like being bored, and I do get bored quite easily. But if you're someone that likes to really get into depth of something, then perhaps a niche role in a bigger company might be better suited for you. I also wanted to go over some misconceptions in marketing. So I think a lot of people have an opinion about marketing, and whether that's as a profession or, you know, within their companies. And one thing that I sometimes hear is that marketing is quite fluffy, so it's just about events and party planning and just fun stuff. And that could not be further from the truth. It is not fluffy at all. And more it's very data driven. So, you know, I think the company I'm at now is particularly data driven, but that's true more and more of every company at every role, because essentially it all comes down to money. So, you know, marketing is a spender of money in general, and with that always comes the need to rationalize that spend and prove what you're getting, so proving the ROI of any investment or initiative. So it's very data driven. You know, we always have to back things up, we have to produce reporting, and that goes for everything. Whether you're doing a digital marketing campaign or you're doing an event, you always have to kind of quantify the numbers that you're talking about. So it's really important to not think that it's some fluffy thing which is just, you know, super fun all the time. It's very data driven, it's very ROI driven, and so don't get into marketing thinking that it's going to be some fun ride, because it definitely isn't. The second misconception is that it's super glamorous, and I'm sure there are marketing jobs out there which are really glamorous. I personally haven't had any of them, but I'm sure there are. But in my experience, most marketing jobs are not glamorous. It may seem glamorous on the surface, but generally speaking, it involves, you know, staying late and being the ones that prepare things and lug the boxes around and do all that kind of stuff. So it is not glamorous. It's definitely a roll up your sleeves kind of job, in my opinion, and the more willing you are to do that, the better you'll do in your career. And the third misconception is it's easy. That kind of goes back to the first point, but it's definitely not an easy job, and especially with kind of marketing roles going towards a trend of having to prove the value and the worth of every last penny that you're spending, it's becoming more and more hard. So, you know, it's difficult to come up with really effective marketing campaigns. It's difficult to think of events that are going to be really great or campaigns that are going to be really engaging, and you really have to follow through. So, you know, you have to do the planning, organization, the execution, but also the reporting and the analytics and the improving. And so it's definitely not an easy job if you want to do it well. However, if you like the kind of combination of being quite creative with being very driven by data and analytics, then marketing could be a really great option for you. So I thought I would end this video with 3 tips on how to get a job in marketing. My first tip is to gain experience. This is so incredibly important, and whilst I think it's great to have a degree in marketing if you know that's what you want to do, I think it's as if not more important to actually get real life experience of marketing. So personally for me, I don't have a degree in marketing. I just didn't want to go down that route, so I studied anthropology instead, and as far as I know, it's never been a hindrance to me because I have real life marketing experience on my CV to back it up. So it's incredibly incredibly important to do, even if it's literally just having, you know, 2 weeks of unpaid work experience on your CV. That is better than nothing. So however you do it, make sure you try and get experience on your CV. Tip number 2 is to customize your CV. So it's really important, I think, to read through the job description of the job you're applying for and try to mirror that in some way in your CV. I'm not saying lying and making up experience which you don't have, but there are so many different ways to word things, so I think it's really important to look at the job description, recognize what it's saying and the kind of person it's looking for, and trying to mirror that in your CV and rewording it in a way that will make it very appealing to the person receiving and reading your application. And my third and final tip is to research the company that you're applying for. This is especially important if you get to interview stage. It's so important to know what you're getting into, know something about the company, because that really just shows commitment and enthusiasm about the job that you're applying for, which is essentially what recruiters are looking for. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it, you found it useful. If you have any questions, then leave them for me in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye, guys.